The name of this movie, inspired by the true story of Hugh Glass, an American resident, is The Revenant. So, at the beginning of the movie, the main characters of this story, Hugh Glass and his son Hawk, are shown. Glass and Hawk, along with about 40 or 45 other men, are hunting animals deep within a dense forest. Actually, they all worked for a company. The company traded in various types of wild animal hides, and their job was to go into the forest, kill various animals, and bring their hides back to the company. And now, for the past several days, they had all been hunting animals together in this forest. Then, one day, while they were all hunting animals in the forest, they saw a boy from their group running towards them from a distance. But it was seen that, a little distance away from them, that boy suddenly fell to the ground and died. What they saw made it seem like someone or some people had probably murdered that boy. And before they could even understand anything there, they saw several sharp arrows coming towards them from within the forest. Several more of their group members were killed by the impact of those arrows. Now, none of them could figure out who was attacking them from within the forest, or why. Then, after a while, they noticed a tribe of indigenous people advancing towards them to kill them, armed with bows, arrows, and sharp weapons. Actually, some days ago, several unknown men had abducted the daughter of that tribe's chief. And now, these indigenous people believed that these men, Glass's group, were probably the ones holding the girl captive. For that reason, the indigenous people attacked them relentlessly, without saying a word. Those indigenous people were fighting with bows, arrows, and sharp weapons. And each of these men, Glass's group, had guns and modern weapons, yet none of them could match the indigenous people. Because those indigenous people were far greater in number, and they knew this forest so well. And therefore, fighting them within this forest was now impossible. So they all quickly escaped from there by boat, taking the river route. Although they all managed to escape from there somehow, many of their men had died in that fight. Just a little while ago, their group had 45 men in total. But now, only 10 of them were alive. Now, after coming quite a distance by boat, Glass says to everyone, "I think we should abandon this boat and take a new route overland, because those indigenous people will surely try to find us. And staying in the boat like this, they will find us very easily." But a man named John in their group did not agree with Glass's words. He said, "Abandoning our boat makes no sense. We can reach our destination fastest by the river route. But if we take a new route overland now, it will take us much longer." Then, their group's captain says, "We will all now act according to Glass's words, because Glass knows this forest better than anyone among us. And now, only he can get us out of here safely." Now, it is seen that soon after, they all abandoned their boat and came ashore. And they let their boat drift away in the river like that, so that, if the indigenous people were watching their boat from the forest, they wouldn't realize they had come ashore. Now, after climbing up from there, they all hid their hides under a large rock, so that in the future, they could return here and retrieve their hides to take back with them. And besides, if the indigenous people found them further in the forest, they would need their hands free to fight. Now, the next morning, it was seen that their decision to abandon the boat and go overland was absolutely correct. Because the indigenous people had easily found their boat and set it on fire. And now, seeing this empty boat, the indigenous people realized that they were all hiding somewhere within this forest. Now, the next morning, it was seen that while the rest of Glass's group members were sleeping in the forest, Glass was keeping watch for them. And while hurrying at that moment, he wandered a little away from his group. And there, in the forest, he spotted several bear cubs. Before he could look away from those cubs, a mother bear charged from behind and began attacking Glass. Actually, the large bear thought that Glass had come there to kill her cubs. Therefore, at that moment, the bear became extremely ferocious, threw Glass to the ground, and began attacking him from behind. And once or twice, it even picked him up in its mouth and flung him aside. Now, it was seen that in an instant, that huge bear had severely injured Glass. And since Glass was quite far from his group at that moment, no one could hear his screams. And because of this attack, Glass's condition had become very bad. And now, he had no ability to stand up at all. Now, it was seen that after attacking Glass for quite some time, the bear moved a little away from him. And seizing this opportunity, Glass fired a shot at the bear with a gun lying beside him. But that shot didn't hit the bear's face or head. It hit its shoulder. Because of this, the shot caused no harm to the bear at that moment. On the contrary, it became even angrier and began attacking Glass again. Now, it was seen that due to being shot, the bear slowly began to weaken after a while. Now, seizing this opportunity, Glass began stabbing the bear with a sharp knife he had. And now, with great difficulty, Glass somehow managed to kill the bear. But amidst all this, his own condition had become very bad. Now, it was seen that hearing Glass's gunshot, His remaining companions reached him shortly after, and seeing Glass in that condition there, they all became very frightened. His condition was so terrible that his companions thought he would probably die very soon. One of his arms and a leg were broken. Along with that, his entire back was covered in deep wounds. And the worst thing was that the bear's claw marks had cut his neck badly, causing a hole in his throat. And now he had no ability to speak at all. Everyone knew Glass would die very soon, but even so, no one gave up there. Everyone tried their absolute best to save him, and while sewing his torn skin there, he fainted due to excruciating pain. And on the other hand, it is seen that the indigenous people are making a deal with another group for the hides gathered by Glass and his companions. And now, in exchange for these hides, they bought several guns and horses from them so that with their help, they could easily track them, Glass's group, down. Meanwhile, it is seen that Glass's companions made a stretcher out of tree branches and were carrying him along, laying him on it. And carrying Glass like this over that difficult mountain path was taking them a lot of time. Now, it is seen that after moving forward like this for several days, winter arrived there, and the cold there was terrible. In winter, the environment there would freeze completely, and there would be heavy snowfall all around. Now, it is seen that after a few days, a very difficult mountain path lay ahead of them. It was impossible to carry Glass across that place in that manner. Now then, a man named Fitzgerald in their group says, "Why don't we all leave Glass here? We can't take him with us from here. And if we all stay here to look after him, those indigenous people will find and kill us very quickly." And after hearing these words, their captain decides that Glass will be killed there. Because, given Glass's current physical condition, he would die in just a few days anyway. And if we leave him here, the forest animals will attack him. And now, Glass doesn't have even the slightest ability left to save himself from them. Now, their captain covers Glass's face with a cloth and is about to shoot and kill him. Then, Glass's son begins crying and pleading with everyone to save his father. And it is seen that after a while, the captain lowers his gun because he also didn't want to kill Glass in any way. Then he says to everyone, "I want 2 people to stay here with Glass. And after he dies in a few days, they should bury him respectfully, perform his last rites, and then return to camp. And those who do this work will be paid $70 each by our company." Then Glass's son and another young boy named Bridger agree to do this task. Then the captain says, "These 2 young boys can't do this job. I need one more experienced man." Then John says, $70 is very little money. If more money is given, I agree to do this job. Then the captain says, "All right, then $100 will be given to each person for this job." Then Glass's son says, "I am doing this for my father, so I don't need any money. You take my share too." And after hearing this, Bridger also tells John to take his money. And hearing that he would get the other 2's money as well, John agrees to do the job. Now, the captain and all the other members of their group leave these 4 there and head back towards their office. And now John, Glass's son, and the other 3 begin waiting there for Glass to die. Now, it is seen that just 1 day later, John became very eager to return from there. For that reason, even before Glass died, John dug a grave for him there. Now, it is seen that even after several days passed, Glass showed no sign of dying. He was surviving quite well. And until he died, John couldn't leave from there in any way. And because of this, John became extremely angry with him. Now, one morning, when Bridger and Hawk had gone hunting nearby, John says to Glass, "Why aren't you dying? You'll die anyway in a few days. And along with that, they will kill us too." And after saying this, he covers Glass's mouth and begins trying to kill him. And Glass had become so weak there that he couldn't defend himself at all. Moreover, because his throat was punctured, he couldn't even scream to call anyone. Now, shortly after, Hawk arrives there. And after seeing all this with his own eyes, he tries to stop John. And because of this, a fight now breaks out between him and John. And during this fight, John stabs a knife into Hawk's stomach and kills him. Glass was lying there watching everything, but at that moment, besides silently watching, he had no ability to do anything. And after killing him, John hides the body a little distance away in one place. Now, later, when Bridger returns from hunting, John tells him, "I saw several indigenous people approaching us from a distance, and Hawk hasn't returned yet. That means those indigenous people must have killed him. So we should flee from here right now." Actually, John had told this lie to escape quickly from there with Bridger. And now, Bridger completely believes his words. He had no idea that John had just murdered Hawk. But Bridger didn't want to leave Glass there in that condition. He says, "We all promised we would bury Glass respectfully after he died and then return." Then John grabs Glass's leg, pulls him off the stretcher onto the ground, and drags him to the grave and throws him in. And since Glass had deep wounds all over his body, he was now suffering terribly from this action. Now, after throwing Glass into that hole, John ties his mouth shut and covers his entire body with soil. And then he tells Bridger, "Anyway, Glass will die here shortly, so to save our own lives, we will perform his last rites beforehand and leave." Although Bridger didn't want to do this at all, he was kind of forced to do it. Now, before leaving there, Bridger leaves his water bottle beside Glass. Now, it is seen that after lying in that grave for quite some time, suddenly some strength returns to Glass. Somehow, with one arm and leg, rubbing and struggling, he manages to get out of that grave. And from there, with great difficulty, he manages to come to where his son's dead body was. After seeing his son in that condition, he felt very sad for the first few moments. But then, slowly, he became extremely angry with John and began burning with a desire for revenge. Meanwhile, it is seen that the next morning, while talking with John, Bridger learns that the previous day, John had lied to him about the indigenous people. That's why, fearing the indigenous people, they left Glass alone there. Now John tells him, "If you tell anyone this truth, they will punish and kill you along with me." And so, Bridger is now forced to comply out of fear regarding Glass. Meanwhile, it is seen that Glass is crawling forward, scraping along the ground from there. And after advancing quite a bit, he sees an animal skeleton lying on the ground, and now he tries to find a little meat or food from within that skeleton to eat. Because, due to the throat injury, he hadn't been able to eat anything properly for several days. But finding no food there, he struggles a little further and comes to the riverbank. There, with the help of that bottle Bridger gave him, he tries to drink river water. But while drinking water, he notices all the water is coming out through the cut part of his throat. And because of this, he begins writhing in agony again. Now, it is seen that he had quite a bit of gunpowder for his gun. And taking out some gunpowder from there, he applies it to his cut throat. And then, setting some dry grass on fire, he takes some of that fire and applies it to the gunpowder on his throat, causing the gunpowder to ignite immediately. And now, because of the burning, the skin on his throat fused together properly. But because of this action, he immediately fainted there from the excruciating pain. Now, it is seen that he began staying in a cave by the riverbank for several days. And sometimes, if he could catch fish from the river or small animals or birds near the cave, he would eat those. And sometimes, if he couldn't find anything, he would survive by eating grass and leaves. And after staying there for several days, he had now slowly recovered quite a bit. Now, with the help of a stick, he could somehow manage to stand up. Now, one such day, while he was sitting by the riverbank, he noticed that the indigenous people were advancing towards him from a distance, searching for them. And now, to save his life from them, he is forced to jump into the icy cold river water. The indigenous people were shooting at him from a distance. But due to the river's strong current, he somehow managed to survive their attack. Now, after floating in the river water for quite some time, he climbs ashore a little further downstream. And now, he begins staying there by the riverbank for several days. There, he kept a fire burning all day to try and keep himself warm. And whenever possible, he would catch fish from the river to eat. And with time, he was becoming even healthier. Now, one night, he noticed that a fire was burning right near where he was lying by the riverbank. And after going a little closer to that fire, he saw a man there, using the fire to hunt an animal and eating its meat. Now, Glass gestures to that man asking for some food. Actually, he was very hungry then. And for the past several days, he hadn't been able to eat anything properly. And seeing Glass in that condition there, the man felt a little pity. So, he gave Glass a large portion of his own food. Now, the next morning, that man asks, "How did you end up in such a condition?" Then Glass somehow manages to explain the whole incident to the man through gestures. Now, after hearing his whole story, that man says, "Some people killed my entire family too, and I felt tremendous anger towards them. Sometimes I think I want revenge on them. But the truth is, revenge is not our work. God is there to judge them." And now, the man agrees to take Glass along with him. Meanwhile, it is seen that Bridger and John have now reached their office. And there, John tells their captain a complete lie, informing him that after Glass died, they buried him very properly. And at the same time, we surrounded his grave with rocks on all sides so no wild animals could reach him. But on the way back, Hawk got separated from us. And now, he's probably completely lost or killed by the indigenous people. Meanwhile, it is seen that the cut on Glass's throat had now completely healed. When drinking water, water no longer leaked out through the hole in his throat like before. But it is seen that the internal wounds in his body had now slowly begun to fester. So that man would sometimes treat Glass. Now, it is seen that one day, while they were both walking along a path, suddenly a massive snowstorm began. And there, in the intense cold storm, Glass fell to the ground in a weak state. And now, to save Glass there, that man cut some tree branches and built a small shelter, a hut, with them. After sleeping inside that shelter all night, when Glass woke up in the morning, he noticed that the man was not beside him. And after going a little distance, he sees that the man had been hanged from a tree by a rope around his neck. Now, he notices another group's camp a little distance away. Now, Glass realizes that those people were the ones who had killed his friend. Now, it is seen that these were the same men from whom the indigenous people had bought guns and horses in exchange for the hides. Now, Glass notices that these men are holding a girl captive. Actually, they were the ones who had abducted the daughter of that indigenous leader. Now, it is seen that one evening, one of these men began behaving indecently with the kidnapped girl. But then, from behind, Glass kills that man and rescues the girl from their hands. And then, taking that man's gun and horse, Glass escapes from there. And the girl also escaped from there on her own. And while escaping from there, the water bottle Bridger had given him fell from Glass's hand there. Now, it is seen that a few days later, when Glass was sleeping in the forest, the indigenous people found him and began shooting at him. Now, while trying to escape from them on his horse, Glass falls into a deep ravine. After falling from above, Glass somehow survived, but his horse died right there. Now, when he regained consciousness after a while, he noticed that a snowstorm had started again there. But then, he had nothing to protect himself from that storm. So he was forced to use his knife to cut open the belly of his dead horse and remove all the meat and entrails. And then, to protect himself from the cold, he crawled inside the horse's hollow belly cavity. And after the storm subsided, he came out and began moving towards his camp again. Now, it is seen that after walking for several days, he had come quite close to his camp. Meanwhile, it is seen that a stranger arrives at Glass's company office after a few days. And that man informs them that all the other members of his group are dead. And for the past several days, I haven't been able to eat anything. So now, I was asking for some food from you, but the man had no money to pay for the food. So he gave them quite a bit of gold nuggets and some other things he had. And it is seen that among those things was the bottle that Bridger had given Glass before he died. Now, after seeing that bottle, everyone thought that Glass's son Hawk must still be alive. And he must have dropped this bottle somewhere, which this man found and brought here. Now, they all set out from there to search for Hawk. But after going quite far into the forest, they all find Glass in a starving and weak state. And seeing him there in that condition, they were all very surprised, because John and Bridger had told everyone that Glass had died. And those two together had buried Glass. Now, after returning to camp, they see that John had fled with all the company's money. And seeing this, their captain became extremely angry, and then immediately set out to search for John. Now, Glass says he wants to go with the captain to search for John. But the captain didn't want Glass to go out in that condition, as he was physically very weak then. Now, Glass says, "A few days ago, I was already dead, and now the only hope I had for living, my son, was killed before my eyes by John. Now I have nothing left to lose. Therefore, I no longer fear death." Now, after searching for several days, Glass and the captain enter a forest and begin searching for John separately. Now, suddenly, from behind a rock, John shoots and kills the captain there. And before Glass arrived there, John hid from that place. Now, after returning there a while later and seeing the captain's dead body, Glass gets an idea. He cuts a tree branch and ties it to the captain's dead body. And then, he places the body in a sitting position on a horse. And he himself hangs limply like a corpse on another horse behind. So that from a distance, it looked like Glass was sitting on the front horse. And the captain's dead body was on the back horse. And now, after moving forward like this for quite a distance, John shoots at them again from a distance. And now, that shot hits and the tree branch breaks, causing the captain's dead body to fall to the ground. But John thought that this time he had probably killed Glass. So he came closer to get a good look at Glass's dead body. But before he could see anything up close, Glass shoots him from the back horse. That shot hits him in the hand. And now, seeing Glass alive, he immediately starts running away. And Glass chases after him to kill him. And now, a very fierce fight breaks out between them. And after the fight went on for quite a while, at one point, Glass was winning. But then he notices that the indigenous people, who had been trying to kill them all this time and whose daughter had been abducted, had arrived on the other side of the river. And seeing them, he remembers that taking revenge is not man's work. God is there for that. And as soon as he remembered this, instead of killing John, he throws him into the river to float away. But from this side of the river, the indigenous people catch John, cut his throat, and kill him. Although Glass didn't kill John with his own hands, in a way, his revenge was complete. Now, it is seen that crossing that small river, the indigenous people start advancing towards Glass. But without saying anything to him, the indigenous people just moved forward. Actually, the indigenous people had now found their daughter. And this was the same girl Glass had rescued from those bad men some days ago. And in this way, after many months, Glass was finally able to take his revenge. And here, the story of this movie ends. If you liked the video, you can subscribe to the channel.